Welcome into Relatable Takes. I'm your host, John Rouse, and I'm really grateful to be able to share a conversation with my good friend Ashley, who's been through a lot since high school, but also has a really beautiful story to share with you all. Just heads up, we will be unpacking suicide and what it's like to be dealing with trauma and loss, but you get to hear it from someone whose perspective you'll enjoy because despite going through a lot, she continues to push down the walls in front of her and come out stronger on the other side. So I truly hope that she can be an inspiration for others, like she was for me. I'll also share that if you have someone close to you that may be experiencing something similar, here's your sign to reach out to that person and extend a helping hand. I know it's not always easy, and I can't imagine what others may be going through. So I only want to extend a reminder of all the resources and foundations that are available 24/7 by phone or text in case you have a loved one or friend that's not in the best place mentally at the moment. Now, with that being said, we unpack a lot with Ashley. She's an App State grad working in content creation for a radio group here in Raleigh, has a lot of fun stories to share amidst the adversity. So stay tuned for the end of the episode when we plug some bands you should be listening to and hobbies you may be interested in giving a try. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. Well, hey Ashley, thanks again for hopping on the podcast today. How's work?
Work's been going good. Daylight savings is definitely kicking my ass this week. Been a little bit hard to adjust, but work has been crazy. I work for a radio group here in Raleigh, and we deal with a lot of breaking sports news, especially everything with the Canes, Miko Rantanen's trade, and uh, a little Rod Brindamore quote that's been going around the internet. So I've been dealing with all of that this week.
All right, so I'm curious, how did was this something you were always interested in, like working in broadcasting, marketing? I mean, what's a little bit more about the work that you are doing? Because I mean, that sounds pretty cool, especially as you can see, kind of this guy trying to get this audience growing and whatnot. Like, I'm so interested to unpack that for a little bit.
Yeah, no, so I mean, actually, funny enough, I would say everything about what I do right now is an accident. I grew up a dancer, so I thought that I was gonna like go to college for dance, go be a rockette or something like that. But as the story goes, I had an injury my junior year right before I was gonna start auditioning for schools. Doctor told me, hey, you probably shouldn't keep dancing. And I said, well, I'm gonna finish it out for high school, but I'll stop at that point. I applied for journalism at App State, funny enough. Just knew I really liked to write, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then from there, I took a semester off before college and I just started freelancing with social media. And I kind of fell in love with like social media marketing and everything of that sort. Um, and as soon as I got to app, I switched my degree to digital marketing on my first day of orientation. And then my job now just kind of happened by accident as well too. I had done some internships throughout college, but it was all like product marketing. And then when I was getting into my last semester at App, I moved back to Raleigh and finished my last semester online. I was applying for jobs. I applied for an on-air host position slash social media
Okay.
for one of the stations that I work for. I never wanted to host. I actually didn't fill out part of the application because I didn't want to host. But just finding social media gigs in Raleigh was a little bit tough. So I was like, I'm just going to shoot my shot wherever. My boss's email actually never made it to me, so he ended up DMing me on Instagram. It was like, "Hey, are you still interested?" So we set up the interview, and I just started talking about social media marketing and the importance of an online brand, so much that we never talked about hosting. I got hired for the job. I never hosted a day in my life. I was part-time for one of our smaller stations, and then when I graduated, they created a position for me to go full-time, and now I manage all the social media, websites, app design. I'm the digital content manager for the radio group, and we do some podcasts. So,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
this is right up my alley.
I'd say that's definitely one way to slide into a DMs. I wish more people would slide into my DMs for job offers like that. But that's no, well, that's really cool. So I guess I'm curious, real quick, then. Why, like, why App State? I mean, it's a beautiful school, beautiful campus, but I mean, what attracted that to you? Were there any other schools that you were looking at before going to college?
Yeah, I mean, so everything was centered around the idea of dance. So I knew all the good schools for dancing, but I had always had this like one dance competition in the mountains, and I would always say, if I didn't go for dance that I would go to App State. And so when it came time to apply for colleges, I actually only applied to Western North Carolina as my safety school, App State, and then UNC Chapel Hill as kind of like my reach school. But I just like when I got the acceptance from App, I knew I had to go. Funny enough, they said, you're accepted, but we don't have a dorm to put you in. Can you wait? Just a semester, and so I went in the spring semester, and yeah, I always felt called to go out there.
That's no, that's awesome. It's beautiful. Now you made me think about like time when I was going to school at ECU, and yeah, they decided to, for whatever reason, have the largest enrollment class, largest freshman class coming to campus that they've ever had. And I mean, that sounds like really cool. You know, you're breaking records and whatnot. But what they didn't realize was that there just wasn't enough dorm room space. And so I'll never
Yeah.
forget seeing students. God, I feel so bad seeing them in some of those like little study rooms and stuff. I guess kind of like some of the shared spaces that were in the dorms that are typically like, I guess I don't know, like clubhouse is not the right way to call it, but just like the places where you'd have a couch and a TV and people would hang out, but instead there were like four beds in four different corners and four
Yeah.
dressers that they all had. I'm like, what are we doing here, guys? That is not cool.
So I actually lucked out and I moved into like one of the upperclassmen dorms. So I had like an apartment style dorm, funny enough.
Damn. Well, that's
I had a roommate still, like I shared a bedroom with someone, but we had a full kitchen and living room and everything.
damn, lucky you. Well, and now, like you said, I think that's kind of the theme. Like a lot of things have you just kind of fallen into. It's worked out, and you know it's so cool to hear a lot of the cool stories that we'll dive into a little bit later, maybe towards the end. But I know a big thing that we were going to talk about is people deal with things in certain ways, different ways, I should say. And I think one of those heavy topics to discuss is grief and people going through loss, whoever it may be, someone important to them. And Ash, I know we've had a lot of discussions about this, but your stories, I mean, it certainly is unique and it's different. It's not easy to talk about. So I'm glad that you're using this as a platform to just share with others kind of what you've been through, how you dealt with it, and hopefully someone listening is able to lean on a little bit of your perspective in case either they're going through it right now or maybe going through it in the future. So I'd really love the floor to be yours when you think back to high school and really just if that is the first time you've experienced such hardship in your life, maybe sharing a little bit more about kind of what you've been dealing with and kind of the aftermath, if you don't mind, Ashley.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of lay the foundation out, I've always had a very unique family situation. I'm the only person in my family that's not raised in New York. We moved down here when I was 3 years old. Um, and I think that that's like pretty relevant in terms of just like culture
Mm.
differences, like being raised in the South by Northerners is definitely something, especially in the Fuquay area, that's a little bit more yee yee, I would say, than maybe Raleigh. Um, I didn't know y'all, sir, ma'am, any of that stuff. But,
10 most important words a mentor mindset is yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and thank you. So that's Johnson County for you.
yeah, I didn't learn that until I was, like, 17. I got yelled at by a police officer because I didn't call her ma'am, and I
What?
went home and I was like, "Mom, what the hell was that?" And she had nothing to say. She was like, "I don't know. I guess it's a thing here." And that's kind of like a big, big part of my life. But I also have two brothers, and my brothers are 12 and 15 years older than me. And they're my half brothers. So they have a different dad, but my dad raised them. So it was always a little bit of a different upbringing than everyone else around me. A lot of
Mhm.
people I knew had siblings their age and different things like that. So I would say my brothers moved out by time I was about 7 or 8. Um, and so Ryan, my brother, he had quite a few experiences. Both of my brothers are very unique people, but he was gay in a time where it wasn't accepted.
Mhm.
Um, he went to Campbell University, which is a private Christian university that's kinda out in the sticks, so you can imagine some of the adversity that he faced,
Mhm.
especially back in, like, 2006 time, um, 2006, 2007, roughly, and my brother was also a genius. Like, he was just the smartest person in the world. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this might not be true, but I'm pretty sure he got IQ tested and they said that his IQ was, like, higher than Einstein's or something crazy, like, he was just like his brain was a sponge, he was one of the, like, smartest people I knew, and obviously, you can kinda tell where this is going because I'm speaking in the past tense when I speak about him. But when I was 14 years old in my 2nd semester of high school, um, just one day, I woke up, I remember it was a Saturday, and, it was just business as usual for me. I was a freshman in high school, I cared about, like, popularity and all this stuff, and so I actually remember I posted on my Snapchat story, and I said, "Hey, anybody wanna hang out today?" Like, as a high schooler in 2015 would, and, within 2 minutes, I heard just, like, the most blood-curdling scream come from, like, my I was up on the 3rd floor, and I heard it down from the 1st floor, and my dad came down to the bottom of the stairs, and he was like, "Ash, will you please come downstairs?" And one thing about me is I'm actually really, really terrified of, like, medical stuff,
Mhm.
also very relevant, but my mom had previously broken her ankle, and that was the only time that I had heard her scream like that. I identified it as my mom. So I was just petrified, and I told my dad, I was like, "Please tell me what's going on. I don't wanna go down there." I was scared that there was, like, blood or broken bones or something, and, he was just, like, pleading with me. He was like, "Ashley, please come downstairs," and I was refusing, and you know how teenagers are too, I was just really refusing, I was like, "No," like, I'm and it was part fear, it was part angst, it was just a lot of things, I was like, "No, tell me what's going on," like, I felt so entitled to knowing what was going on. My dad was just kind of frustrated, and he just, like, huffed, and he looked at me, and he was like, "Ryan's dead," and that moment, I mean, like, that's something that's ingrained in my brain, and, I mean, I could tell you that I told you it was a Saturday, it's I can, like, be in that moment again and just really know 'cause, that arguably is, like, one of the biggest life changes I think I've ever gone through, like, that is the moment that my life changed in a lot of different ways, um, so the short of it, I guess, is that my brother, um, he took his own life, and this was something that, it was early 2015, so also if you think about culturally, like, where we were at that point, it was 3 months before gay marriage was legalized,
Mhm.
um, and I think all of these details are important just to
Yeah.
recognize, but yeah, so from there, um, I remember my mom said one thing to me, she said, "This is going to change everything." And I at that time at 15, like, never really having experienced death before, never especially, like, an immediate family member, it's a very, I don't wanna say it's very rare because I feel like life has brought me so many people who have experienced similar things, but, um, it's a unique experience for sure, and just from there on, my life did change, it changed everything, and I didn't wanna accept that at times, but yeah, so that's the short of it,
Short of it, I mean, it's golly, Ashley, I mean, I just feel for you so much, especially young high schooler you just, "Hey, who wants to hang out?" And the next thing you
yeah.
know, I mean, just the biggest life change. I mean, so you and your
Oh, I
brother.
deleted that post within 2 minutes too, and I
Oh, god.
remember someone swiped up on the story, and it was, like, some guy that, like, had a crush on me or something, and, like, I literally, like I remember being like I texted him back and I was like, "Never mind," like, not gonna hang out anymore," and he was like, "Why? What just happened?" And, like, I mean, like the moments after finding out news like that, like, I feel like you just kinda black out, but I do remember taking down that post, like, that was one of the first things I was like, "I don't want anyone to call me right now, I don't want anyone to text me right now."
Rightfully so, but man, so I guess Ashley, so I know this. I mean, your mom was right. I mean, that certainly did change everything in the course of your life. But I mean, is there something that you could point to the most that, like, you as a high schooler, you have to go to class, you got to deal with this, you have to cope. I mean, what was that process like for you, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so I was off of school for about a week. And you know what's interesting too, and this, I mean, I know we'll talk about more recent things as well too, but something that people don't talk about when they talk about death, they talk about this like sadness around it. It's a lot of fucking work when someone dies. I just
Mhm,
have to say that. Like, and it's just the part that no one talks about. It's all the admin stuff. Like you can't just check out, you do have to let people know. So,
mhm,
like, I remember my parents called my school and my principal talked to me on the phone and he was like, "Take all the time you need." You know, my dad had to call his work and tell his work. My mom had to call her work and tell her work. We had to call my dance studio. Like, you gotta sound the alarm bells, and that's, like, one part of it. I remember, like, the immediate admin work. And, like, the other thing too is, like, you immediately have to plan a funeral, and when it's sudden, it's like you're in this shock and everything like that. It's the immediate wave after losing someone is just like I I I really, I mean, it's not surprising, but it's just like that work afterwards, it's the last thing you wanna do, but it's like it needs the most immediate attention. Um But yeah, I remember that week, took a week off of school, and the days kinda blurred together. I kinda call it, like, my first, like, blackout week, like, and not in the sense that people would think of blacking out, but, like,
not your app
like
stay blackout, that you're dealing with some shit blackout.
yeah, like, there's this, like, it's like your body and your, like, brain, like, kinda numb everything for you. It's very interesting, but, um I guess I'll, like, rewind back to maybe one of the most pivotal moments. Um, it was the day that we found out. Um, my parents had to go to his apartment, and we knew that he had taken his own life, but they had no idea what it was going to be waiting for them at the
Mhm,
apartment, you know? And I'm 14 at the time, so I they did not wanna bring me, and I was really upset about that at that point, like, and also rewinding back to a little bit, there were signs, but I think, you know, everyone hindsight is 2020. My brother hadn't shown up to Thanksgiving or Christmas, and all I knew is that he had had a fight with my mother, and
mhm.
you look back and you're like, "Was that a sign or was this a sign or this or that?" I had heard mumblings through the wall, and so I was just I was at this point where I was 14, and I felt like so much was hidden from me. I found out later that my parents had planned an intervention for my brother because they were concerned that this was a possibility, but the intervention was the day after, just different things like
Wow.
that, and it's like, I didn't know that. Of course I didn't know that. I'm 24, almost 25 now, and I look back and I'm like, "Of course I didn't know that." I was 14, but at the time, I was like I was so frustrated with the lack of information and the lack of, like, I wanted to be included, and I felt very, like, excluded from that process, but it's like, well, of course, I was 14. So my parents, they had our neighbor take them to my brother's apartment, and I was going to stay at one of my neighbor's places until my parents came back and whatnot. I was really just pissed off at them for not, like, taking me with them. Like, at that point in my life, I did not wanna be around family a lot, but that was the day that I wanted to be around family. And so I was like, "I'm gonna walk to my friend's house." So I start walking, and as I'm going down the sidewalk, I'm it's around dinner time, and I'm looking into all of these houses. I lived in, like, a neighborhood with a bunch of houses, and I'm looking into all their windows, and I see all these families sitting down for dinner and doing what families do, and I remember this, like, deep pit of anger that I had. I was like, "Oh my god, none of these families know that my whole earth just shattered." Like, and I was getting so upset. I was like, "All of their families are whole." And that was a moment in time, like, I got so upset, I had to have my dad drive me the rest of the way, but, like, I just looking into these houses and I realized, like, all the lives that are unaffected while mine is just, like, completely uprooted, flipped on its head, and changed forever, and it I feel like people inherently wanna feel special, I think that's a
Mhm.
human nature thing, but that was the moment where I realized, like, I'm not special, actually. Like, my whole world changed, and I just walked by 20 houses, and all of theirs are exactly the same. And the earth keeps spinning, and it keeps going, and that might sound, like, morbid to some people or cause existential crises for some people, but for me, like, that was kinda the thing that kept me going.
Yeah.
That realization that, like, I'm not special, and I gotta keep going, I gotta keep up because the world's not gonna stop for me because of what I went through.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's I I guess I'm curious, how how'd your parents find out? I mean, were there neighbors there that were checking in on your brother? I mean, I'm glad that it seemed like people cared, and it just
Mhm.
sucks that it just came at just a I don't know. I don't want
It
to say a wrong
was
time, but it's just, man, the intervention the next day and you guys looking after
yeah,
him, but also, I mean, he's his own person and gonna do his own thing and you can't control that. And that's the hardest part of all of it.
yeah, it was his roommate that found him, and what's interesting too when it comes to suicide in the conversation, and I do wanna be careful with the way that I talk about this
Yeah,
because this experience, and I think this is just, like, a good disclaimer to put out there. This experience is just my experience.
100%.
And when it comes to suicide, it's such a layered conversation. And so what I might say about this might not be the most politically correct to speak about suicide, and it might not be the most, um applicable to everyone's situation, but for me, this is just, like, where, 10 years later, I've had to, like, find my peace. I've been involved with, like, a lot of suicide prevention, and especially in the wake I mean, actually, before the ironic thing is before my brother did what he did, um, gosh, it would have been about, like, 5 years before at least, we were in suicide prevention walks together. My brother, who ultimately took his own life, was I have signs. I have signs, I have photos of us holding up these signs of us in a suicide prevention walk together. There's a lot of suicide prevention that can be done, and I hate to say it like this, but in my brother's case, I don't think there's anything that would have changed it. I laid down the foundation of him being gay in a time where it wasn't accepted, and he passed away not knowing that gay marriage would be federally legalized, he was incredibly smart, and I know when it comes to my brother, I think he just didn't feel like there was a corner of the earth that he fit in, and it's often referred to that the smartest people are the saddest, and I think that that is to a T with my brother's
Mhm.
case. It wasn't his first attempt, um, and we later we found stuff on his devices that said that this was something that he had thought about from the age of 12 onward, um, and he was 26. So, I hate to say, and there is so much to prevent suicide. There's so many suicides that are because of bullying or harassment or because, like, we see the statistics with the LGBTQ community, and I do think that that's a factor with my brother, but also, like, I think there was just a sense of not relating to people. I know he had this sentiment of feeling like he had to dumb himself down for the general public, like, just different things like that, and that's just where I had to reside with it,
Yeah.
looking back on it now because you can play the what if games, and especially with a death as layered as a suicide, the what if games, the blame games, you want something to point a finger at, um, it it can tear people up, and I watched it tear people up. I had a family of 5, and I saw how all 4 of us handled my brother's death differently. Um, my other brother, I think it was like it took him 6 years to actually start talking to me about it. Um,
Wow, 6 years. That is
yeah,
it's a long time. I mean, because I guess you think about that you're in college now, you're drinking age officially. I mean,
yeah,
what do you think took I mean, obviously, everyone deals with grief in so many different ways, and I've experienced loss myself, especially in high school with some good friends, and it's tough. Everyone has to deal with it
mhm,
their own way, and take as much time as you need, but, I mean, what do you think took your brother so long to just talk to you about it? Especially how much older he is than you, feels like that should come a little bit
yeah.
more naturally, at least in my opinion, but that's not what it's worth.
So, I would say my brother was there for me to talk about it, but he's a very closed book when it
Okay.
comes to his emotions. Um, and he's very unique in his own way as well too. So, I think it the dynamics of our family always kinda were just to keep our emotions to ourselves a bit, except except for my mom, and I love my mom. She was very outward with her grief, um, and she really struggled with I mean, you lose a child, that's terrible, you lose a child by them wanting to take their own life. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
So, she really struggled with needing something to blame that wasn't herself, and I think we all were trying to be there for each other in ways, but grief really it really pulls people apart, and, all of us this person that we lost meant something different to all of us. That was my mom's son. That was my dad's stepson, but he saw it as his son, and I know that my brother referred to him as my dad's first name, but my dad told a story about the first time that, my brother referred to him as dad, And then my brother Jamie and Ryan, you would have thought that they were twins if you saw them together, like, they were so close. And then for me, I lost a brother who was 12 years older than me, who was this role model to me. And so it's different for every single person that, experienced it, and I think oftentimes I was viewed as the baby of the family. I mean, I was, but, like, I think there was a lot of, like, protective nature around me, and so I think when it came to my brother and my dad, they didn't wanna put how they were feeling onto me, and with my dad too, he is 50% Swedish, 50% German, and I think those cultures were very much presenting in how he expresses his emotions and the lack thereof and kinda holding them close to his chest and whatnot. So that was just kind of the dynamic of my family, if I'm being honest, and to this day, I mean, my brother still doesn't really talk to me about it much, and if he does, it's more sharing frustrations than, like, the necessary, like, vulnerable side of things.
Yeah. Well, at least he knows that at the end of the day, he does have an outlet in you. I know that. You know
Yeah.
that, and maybe there will come a time because again, like it takes as much time as you need, and even if it is 10 years ago, I guess.
Mhm.
Maybe it just needs another 10 or 10 more after that. But at the end of the day, that's kind of my reminder for a lot of people too. Our reminder, I should say, is that like be there for your people, check in for your people, listen to your people. You don't always have to talk and be the, I guess kind of the know-it-all. I share that looking in the mirror because a lot of times when my family are going through some stuff, I just kind of, hey, let's talk it through. And then I just realize you just got to be there, just got to listen. And I'm glad that you've at least had some outlets, but I'm also, I want to lighten it up and say like, well, I mean, you and Ryan, I mean, one of your favorite memories? I mean, kind of growing up. I mean, I know there's an age gap and stuff like that, but like when you think about him and a lot of the fun stuff that y'all had just growing up, moving, traveling back, seeing family up in New York. I mean, anything kind of come to mind right off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, he was quick-witted, that is one thing to say about him. I think too, like, Ryan really exposed me to, like, a lot of different sides of this earth. One thing that I would say I'm very, very grateful for is, being around the gay community at such a young age, I especially growing up in what I refer to more of a Yee Central kind of area.
Yee.
Yeah, it's like I was exposed to, like, a lot of people who had this adverse opinion of anything that was different than them. But for me, because of being exposed to so much, that it was secondhand nature normal, and I think, because of Ryan, I have this, like, abundance of just, like, acceptance and inclusivity for everyone and that because it was just all normal, we see the conversations that happen online of if kids should know if what gay is at the age of 5 and stuff like that. Well, hey, I am someone who knew what it was at, like, the age of 5, and here I am, and
Here
I'm
you
straight.
here you
So,
are.
like, don't worry, it did not turn me gay. Like,
It's not
I
contagious. It's just who you are sometimes, and that's okay.
yeah, well, and it's funny too, cause like, I remember when I was, like, super little, I looked at Ryan and I was like, "When are you gonna have a girlfriend?" It the answer was never, cause he did not like girls. But yeah, just, like, I'm just knowing all that stuff at such a young age, and I mean, he was so caring, like, he hated blood, and if I fell, he'd clean up my cuts, like, in all the videos that, we have, like, all the home videos, it's kind of funny because you think about it, like, 12 and 15-year-old boys, and all of a sudden there's a toddler, but then camcorders are just coming out. Like, I was their perfect test subject for all technology, and, like, every holiday, you see them set it up on the tripod and point it right at the toddler, and, like, there's just a lot of different funny moments, and you see, like, when we moved to New York, we lived in a hotel for a little bit, and they were following me around with a camera, and you just see me, like, I'm not even aware of this age difference, like, I think that I'm as smart as them, I think that I am as tall as them, like, just all of these things, and, like, the just you could see how much, like, love and care that there was there, like, with both of my brothers, and I always say that, like, my brothers showed me love in such unique ways, like, we weren't a very affectionate family, but, like, my brothers were the type to get on a bike and follow me around when I got my first electric scooter, or they set up a trampoline for me and tied balloons on it and lined it up so that I would see it out my window when I woke up on my birthday, like, just they were such caring brothers.
And I
So
can't help but think that they are the ones that maybe influenced you from a content creation, digital marketing perspective by saying, "Hey, here's what a camera is. Here's how you take pictures. Here's how you highlight this and share it to the world." And now here you are doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's funny because I always say that, like, being a dancer and I did, like, a little bit of modeling in high school and being in choir, and then also just always having a camera on me, like, I'm so comfortable behind the camera now. Like, people ask me about, like, do I ever wanna get in front of the camera? And you know what, parts of me do, like, even just being on this podcast, I'm like,
Well, I'm
"Ooh,
sorry, this
maybe
is
I sh"
a video free, is only audio podcast. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, go on.
But yeah, it's like I'm like, "Oh, maybe I do." Like, being on this podcast, I'm like, "Maybe I should start a podcast or something,"
Hell
but
yeah.
now I'm just so comfortable behind the camera, like, it's nice to, like, kinda understand the inner workings of it and, like, be behind the scenes now.
No, that's awesome, and I know, I guess so. You've gone through, made it through high school, graduated, went off to college, had an unbelievable time, met some good people, and then here you are, just working, crushing it, living in Raleigh. I guess how far after graduating at App State did it take you to move kind of back to this area, Wake County, Raleigh area?
So, I actually moved before I graduated. I My last semester was entirely online. I was basically, like the thing about Boone is, like, it's a big small town, and after 4 years, you're either never leaving Boone or you cannot wait to get out of there, and I was
Yes.
basically crawling down the mountain. Um
Basically, let me just slide down as far as I can. Yeah, that's kind of how Greenville was. And when we
Yeah,
were
I
looking
can
at leaving
imagine.
Greenville, it was kind of the same thing. Someone told us early on, they're like, if you don't leave Greenville now, you're never gonna leave. And it was one of those things that, like, families there, was born there, loved it there, a couple of degrees from ECU, and it's just a lot of unbelievable relationships. But it was at the same time where I'm like, I love this, but I think if someone's telling me this, maybe that's my sign to say it's time to go. Kind of like you, it's
Yeah.
time to spread our wings and get out of our fun college towns, no matter how great that can be at times.
Yeah, and I feel like with college, you hit a point where you see your friends leaving, and then you're like, "Okay, I'm ready to leave and start the next," and everything, and so, yeah, I it just lined up. My lease ended in December, I wasn't graduating until May, and I moved back. I moved back in with my cousin. I had a boyfriend at the time, so we moved in with my cousin into his spare bedroom and just took it from there. We took some time to get some jobs, but then, yeah, I fell into my job.
So I know we're going to dive into another story of yours, but to kind of, I guess, set the scene for that as we talk a little bit more. So you move in with you, your boyfriend, and your cousin, just the three of y'all living together.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, I guess like a lot of stories I'm sure you can share, but I'm curious, kind of like how I mean, how was that like the dynamic of just family? You guys, I mean, was your cousin close to your family with your brothers, your mom and dad by chance?
So my cousin, he lived in New York. For a while, it was just my family here down in North Carolina. My dad's cousin and his family moved here at one point. But
Oh,
my cousin, funny enough, it was right after shutdown. We got the news that our grandma had been diagnosed with dementia, and we both had complicated relationships with her, I guess
okay.
is the best way to put it. But I called him and I was like, "Hey, I'm going up to New York." He was living in Florida at that point. He had his own journey of getting his way down to Florida. I was like, "But I'm going up to New York to see the family." I hadn't seen him in like 5 years, like, cause I had 2 cousins. We were all born within the same 10 weeks, funny
Oh my
enough.
gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
What was in the water with your family? Jeez.
So what's funny is we also are not blood related, none of us are. My mom and my cousin Jake, his dad, were both adopted into the same family. And so, our 3rd cousin, Erin, her mom was born into that family. So none of us are blood related. Which
Interesting.
yeah, but we are all around the same age, and so after my brother passed away, actually, Erin and Jake both spent, like, summers, like, multiple summers down in North Carolina with us. Um, and even I think Jake had done that once before Ryan had passed away, so we were pretty close. But we just, like, towards the end of high school, like, family dynamics, they're so complicated. My family
Yeah.
is, I swear, both sides of my family, I say, is like a soap opera waiting to be produced. Honestly, with the amount of death that we've experienced, that alone. But, yeah, so, they were just we just didn't talk. There wasn't anything bad between us cousins, but we just didn't talk that much. So when I got news about my grandma, I called Jake and I was like, "Listen," this is like 2021 time. I was like, "Listen, I'm gonna go up there with Jamie, and I was wondering, do you want to drive up from Florida to North Carolina and then take the drive with us up to New York?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." So we did. We stayed with our aunt and uncle, and we went and saw my grandma and whatnot. And then we came back down to North Carolina, and my mom was gonna go back up to New York at the end of that month. So my cousin was like, "I'll go with you again. I'll just stay here." He did not like where he was at in Florida. And so he just kind of stayed and never left. My cousin unfortunately lost his dad when he was like 8 years old. So he had inherited some money and whatnot. And so he had money put aside, and my mom's a real estate agent and she set him up with a townhome here in Raleigh. So,
Nice. Well, I'm glad that
yeah,
worked out. You guys, I mean, all of you guys were able to kind of reconnect and live with each other and be in a good spot. But I also know that for you, the last 6 months of it's been interesting. It's been
the last year.
I mean, look, you're right. I mean, the
Yeah.
last 12 months, daggone. I mean, the world's just
Yeah.
continued to just, I mean, you could talk about all the socioeconomic stuff. You could talk about politics. You could talk about pop culture. But then we talk about like Ashley Pearson. It's a really, I mean, it's a special story at the end of the day because I know what you've gone through is not easy, but would love for you to kind of share, we're going to talk about your dad, and I know that's tough because I recognize, especially from what you've shared with me, how he's your best friend, and it's no longer with us. And Ashley,
Yeah.
I would love to hear kind of a little bit more about behind the scenes, if you don't mind, if you're okay with
Yeah.
it, because it's you've gone through a lot, and I think that's what I want a lot of people to realize and hear. But also, what I want them to hear is kind of who you are and how you've dealt with it, and just kind of again, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so, I was living with my cousin and my boyfriend at the time. I love it when I talk in past tense because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, the foreshadowing, the foreshadowing."
The storyteller in you. There you go.
So Yeah, I mean, life was going pretty well, like, 2023 was a good year, like, I graduated college, I had this job that I love. The nice thing about my job is, like, I get to see so many cool artists and meet some cool, like, athletic, like, people, sportsmen,
Hell yeah,
y
sports, yeah.
sports. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I had a pretty good year. I had been invited out to present, marketing research to the American Marketing Association, like, it kinda felt like everything was just, like, going right there for a little bit.
Mhm,
And I'm actually gonna rewind, a little bit before everything kicked off with my dad because I think that this is also an interesting part of the story.
mhm.
Um I was just at a regular appointment with my OB, and she just asked me, she was like, "Hey, while we're here, do you wanna do a breast exam?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not? I'm already here, might as well."
Yeah.
And so we do the exam, and she said, "Oh, has this lump always been there?" Um, and I was like, "Funny enough, it wasn't at my physical 6 months ago." And so she was like, "Yeah," she was like, "It's probably nothing, but I wanna go ahead and send you in for an ultrasound," and I was like, "Okay, that's a little disheartening, but okay, yeah, I guess this is happening," and so, I go in for an ultrasound, and immediately they send me to the cancer hospital, and I was like, "Whoa." So I'm kinda getting hit with, like, my own situation here and, the ultrasound, they were like, "We still don't think it's anything, but it's just, like, not quite the shape where we can dismiss it, so we wanna send you in for a biopsy." So then I go in for my biopsy, and they were like, "We're gonna call you with the results, and, if it's benign or if it's not cancerous, like, we might still refer you to a surgeon because it could become cancerous or it could grow." So then the next day after my biopsy, I get a call and they're like, "Hey, it's not cancerous, but we do want you to meet with a surgeon and be assigned with an oncologist." And so I was like, "Oh shit, here we go." So from like August of 2023 to December 27th, 2 days after Christmas, um, I was dealing with all that, and the surgeon was basically like, "I don't think it'll become cancerous, but I it could grow," and he was like, basically, "Your 2 options are," he was like, "You can choose to have surgery and have it removed now, or come back every 6 months, and we'll have to continually check it," and I looked at him and I was like, "So you're telling me 6 months from now you could say, 'Yep, you need the surgery.'" And I was like and he was like, "Yep, exactly." And I was like, "Okay. So let's go ahead and do it now. I've met my deductible. Let's do it at the cheapest." So 2 days after Christmas, my, boyfriend at the time and my dad took me to go have the tumor removed. It came back, it was not cancerous. I'm not at any higher risk or anything. But a week after, I have a surgery complication that leaves me unable to lift more than 5 pounds, for about 3 or 4 months, it was like that. So, I think that's also really important because I had just, like, basically had my own face with, like, my mortality, that's the first time I had ever experienced that, and I think it really kinda trickles into what ultimately I'm about to start talking about because one thing that, like, I noticed in that time, like, it's really lonely when you go to the doctor. I just have to say that, like, I was awake my whole biopsy, and it's like, this is, like, a nerve-wracking thing, and they're doing these needles and all this stuff, and, like, you're alone in that room with the doctors, you know? Like, my mom was out in the waiting room, but you're alone in that room, so, ultimately, um, I had my surgery complication in January, and I think it was or like the first week of February, I get a call from my dad and he says, "Hey Ash, I gotta tell you something." And I was like, "What's up, Dad?" And he was like, "They found something in my lung. Um, they're gonna send me in for a biopsy." And yeah, but he around the time of my surgery when he took me, he had been struggling with a cough. He went to, like, urgent care, and they said it was pneumonia, and they gave it to him or not that they gave it to him, they gave him medicine and
Mhm.
everything, and then it didn't work, and so he went back to the doctor, and that's when they did the X-ray, and they found the mass in his lung. So that was February, we went me and my dad, we used to go to all these concerts. That was, like, kind of our thing is going to a bunch of different concerts, and pretty much, I had these tickets from work, and we went and saw Journey. It was February 17th of last year. It was 3 days before his birthday, and I just knew, like, my dad was so puffy and red, and he had told me about how he had been struggling a little bit and whatnot, and I had this sinking feeling. I remember going back home, um, to my cousin and my boyfriend at the time, and I was just like I broke down after that concert, and I was like, "I just have this feeling that, like, he's really sick. Like, I have a feeling this is really bad," and, 4 days after the concert, one day after his 58th birthday, my dad went in for his biopsy, and he was so puffy around, like, his neck and his face. They immediately sent him to the emergency room, and they told him that he had cancer. He had lung cancer. And I'll never forget, like, funny enough, I was at the OB that day. Something about going to that office, just
Yeah.
fucking brings cancer on or something, I don't know. And I was in the parking lot when my mom called me and told me, that he had cancer and he was at the emergency room and he, had to be there until they could figure out what kind of cancer it was and give him his first round of chemo. They weren't gonna let him go. And the reason why he was sent to the emergency room was because of how puffy he was. And the reason why he was so puffy was because the tumor had actually wrapped around his airway and closed it by 70%. So I took off of work that week and I spent that whole week in the hospital with my dad. And my dad was the kind of guy that he was like, Ash, don't like put your job at risk because I mean, my job did not care. I work for the best company. They had my back throughout all of that. They told me take as much time as I needed. So I spent all that time with my dad in the hospital, and kind of funny enough, and I include some of these details, A, because it's so recent, and B, because it brings back that sentiment that I'm not special and the world moves on. Because while my dad was in the hospital, I left the hospital one day and you're waiting for all these scans and all this stuff and to know how bad it is, what stage it is, and everything. And in the midst of all of that, one of my closest friends, she was trying on wedding dresses, um, because she was getting married. So I left the hospital and went to go with her to try on wedding dresses and then went back to the hospital. And that's one of those moments where it's like, wow, how can you experience something so happy and so sad, like simultaneously, you know? Um, and so my dad was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer, February 21st of last year, and gosh, let me tell you, I experienced a sudden death. I experienced a sudden death in my family, and loss is not comparable. I need to make that so important,
Mhm.
but I feel like there were a lot of moments in my life where you wake up one day and your life is one way and you go to bed and it's completely different. And in those moments, you have no choice but to pivot. You have no choice but just to accept what just happened to you.
Yeah.
Experiencing something like this with my dad, because that was just the start. You know, we had a whole year almost. It wasn't a whole year, it was 10 months. Um, of of being with someone who was slowly getting sicker and sicker and sicker and having hope and when do you know and just okay, we're holding on to every small detail and just hoping that it gets better and then like every time that you hear a treatment failed and you're watching someone struggle to like even walk the way that they used to or eat because of the chemo. That was such a different kind of experience, you know, and that's not to discredit what I previously went through because that was tough. All of it was tough. But this was truly a new experience. And when it comes to loss and when it comes to hardship, I kind of got complacent in thinking that I had experience. Like I had always said, I know how I'll act when shit hits the fan. And that stays true, and I do think that I acted exactly as I would have thought, but, like, oh my goodness, it's just different. So, also something to point out, and I didn't mention this with my brother, but when you're experiencing grief, um, or just life in general, when shit hits the fan, you really see who's in your corner. Like, you really see who's in your corner. I've lost so many people as a byproduct of death and a byproduct of grief. Um, and really, I think that sometimes I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, but I think that, the universe you've got people in your life that may just be comfortable in your life,
Mhm.
who might not treat you the best, who might not treat you with the respect that you deserve or the love and care that you deserve. And I've had many friendships and relationships where I felt like I was constantly begging people to respect me and trying to explain to people how to respect me. And if they can't respect you on a good day, they are not going to respect you when shit hits the fan, and they're
Yeah.
not going to support you when shit hits the fan, and grief really highlights that, and that's a lot of what I went through this past year as well too. Because ultimately I lost my dad in November, and there's a lot that, like, there's so much to say there and so much I could say with the medical stuff, and there's so much that I could say with hospice, because me and my mom, we were around the care nurses for my dad for a week. We were told when he was going into hospice, we were told that it was gonna be months, but it only ended up being a week and a day. Um,
Man.
but and that was just fast paced, and I would wake up at 3
Ugh.
AM to take over for my mom and whatnot. There's so much to say there, but one thing is true, like, there's so much just relationship stuff that comes as a byproduct of all of this hardship as well too.
Yeah, so I guess I mean I'm glad you brought that up, Ashley, and I mean God bless you. I mean uh, I can only imagine what you're feeling, how it's been. I mean I remember vividly, with Katie being in our house at that time and just getting a chance to hear about you, learn a little bit more about your story, and then ultimately kind of when that did happen. I mean, Katie was telling me a little bit about that, and hey, she's jumping there, but what did your support system look like, if you don't mind? Because I know it can be different and it's hard, and you were kind of alluding to a lot of that. But I mean, who was in your corner? And maybe you don't have to names or be too specific. But I mean, I guess I'm more curious. Like, what did it just overall look like for you? Because that's tough.
So, I guess also too to say I've moved twice since my dad was diagnosed with cancer, if that alludes to anything. So about 2 weeks after my dad was diagnosed, I had had a trip planned with my boyfriend at the time to go to Sweden. Like I said, my dad's Swedish, so I was gonna go to Taylor Swift out in Sweden, and then I was gonna
Oh
meet
hell
my
yeah.
family. Yeah, we still have family in Sweden that live in the same town that they've always lived in, so I got reconnected with them, my dad
Mhm.
connected me to them and whatnot. We decided to cancel the trip, and, my boyfriend and I, had a we had had our good and our bad moments at that point. But I had suggested to him because living with my cousin was temporary. It was supposed to be at least. We weren't supposed to be there for as long as we were. I had suggested to him, why don't we take the money that we were going to use towards Sweden and put that towards getting our own place? And I think I was just really trying to grab onto things that were like positive to work towards while experiencing the negative. But when I prompted that conversation, he said that he didn't know I had previously wanted to move to New York. I don't know if I still do. That's a whole other layer of grief. But he first said to me, he said, "I don't think I can move to New York with you." And I remember looking at him and I was like, "You really think moving to New York is on my mind when like my dad has cancer?" And actually my motto of the last year ended up being like, I can't plan for my future until I know what happens with my dad. Because your life does go on hold when stuff like that happens. But anyways, ultimately we had this conversation, and I thought maybe it was a little bit more of a conversation, and I think for him it was a little bit more of a decision, but breaking up was on the table. And so I had 3 people that I considered in my primary circle, my cousin, my boyfriend at the time, and one of my best friends, and all of us were incredibly intertwined and enmeshed, and maybe to an unhealthy point. But that was my primary support system at the time of my dad getting diagnosed. Well, let's throw a breakup in the middle of all of that. Things got messy quick, especially when you're living with someone that you're breaking up with in your cousin's house. Um,
That is certainly unique.
it is certainly unique. Something that I carried with me from my brother's death is I think that I kind of deal with things on my own. Um, And I had this nature of not wanting to be a burden to others, and I think that this kinda comes from having such a heavy past, and I think it also kinda comes from the misogynistic world that we live in, making women feel like we're too dramatic at times and different things. So, actually
What?
yeah,
No. What? You
she
don't
must be
say.
on her period if she's crying.
What? What a BIT. Oh my god.
Yeah. So, I actually, I minimized myself a lot in that experience. I would drive to a parking deck in downtown Raleigh, I'd go to the top of the parking deck, and I would
Mhm.
cry. And that's where I would go to cry so that I was not crying in the house and putting this burden onto the people that I was around, especially going through the breakup and everything like that. Ultimately, I ended up being the one to move out. The breakup got messy at times, and I was the one that was in the position to be able to move out, and I also just knew I couldn't stay in the bedroom that I shared with my ex and he be the one to leave, and it was all my stuff, so all the stuff would have been exactly the same and he would have just been gone, and I was like, I can't handle that right now." Um, and there was this time where it was like, maybe I wait until July. I think we broke up in March. I was like, maybe I wait until July and I get to have roommates and like that I didn't think I could live on my own, and I was gonna, like, go stay in someone's guest bedroom, but I also got a cat with my ex-boyfriend, and I said, "That cat is mine," and he is, that is my child. I don't care what people say
Mr.
about sing
Oliver.
Yes, I don't care what people say about single women with cats, that is my son. Um, and Taylor Swift, you are my hero, but
Yeah, yep, yep.
but so I was like, I don't, because living in someone's guest bedroom that's already furnished, I would have also had to leave all of my stuff as well too until that July moment of being able to move in officially with roommates and whatnot. So I ended up getting a one bedroom, living on my own and experiencing grief. Living on my own for the first time and experiencing grief was something. I will tell you that. And my support system, I will say, there was tension at times. There was a whole breakup, and we have people who are so enmeshed with people's lives and people trying to straddle the fence. And I think, there was a lot of hurt that I felt from everyone involved. And if we had talked maybe 6 months sooner, I probably would say some really harsh things about the situation. But ultimately, the people, my best friend and my cousin, when shit hit the fan significantly with my dad, they showed up.
Mhm,
And that showed me a lot. So while some of the dynamics were tricky and whatnot, I think everything happens exactly as it should. I don't think necessarily everything happens for a reason because my dad did not just get cancer because I was complacent in how good my life was going. No, like it's not like that. Sometimes shit just happens and it
mhm.
sucks, but I think it happened as it should because my ex came back and I let him back, and then he left and I let him leave, and then he came back and I let him back again, and it was just this whole thing. He was so entwined with my everything in terms of this last year. And there's a lot that could be said about that, but even so, in every moment that I was let down, I showed myself that I can handle this, that like I am capable, that I am strong enough. And mentioned earlier too that I am significantly scared of like medical stuff and blood and broken bones and all these things. But I'll tell you what, I sat there in the hospital with my dad through chemo treatments. My dad had COVID at one point, and I was in a COVID hazmat suit sitting next to my
Oh my
dad.
god.
He had heart surgery, and like I was there with him, and that I
Mhm,
drove him to surgery by myself during hospice. Like, hospice is something else, I'll tell you that one. Like, I crushed up his medicine and I mixed it for him, and I was there. And like truly, 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 I hear people talk about this when they talk about having kids, how like it's just a switch that flips and like you can't. you can't explain it until you experience it, but you just, like, become this different person. The same is true in situations like this. I would never be around someone who's at risk of puking, I will tell you that. I avoided it all through college successfully, but I sat there with my dad knowing that he could get sick at any point, you know? Like, this switch flips and your back's against the wall, and you get to decide in those moments how you want to respond, and I can say officially that, like, I did exact I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of how I moved throughout this. My dad knew how much I cared about him. I think my dad was at peace at the end of the day when he passed away because he saw that me and my mom both did things that we probably thought that we would never be able to do. Um, and in every time that I was let down by those dynamics last year too, that was another test to myself of like, can you handle this? Do I need the crutch of going back to my ex time and time again? You know, when he was there to offer support, I accepted that. And I also think part of it was because I didn't want to rock the boat in terms of the dynamics and everything like that. But ultimately, I could handle everything by myself. And there was some ironic timing in how things happened with my ex. It felt like there were times where he would almost respond to, like, something progressing with my dad by leaving the scenario or changing the dynamic, but yeah, ultimately, like, I handled this past year as best as I possibly could. It sucks watching someone you love get sick, but also there's this moment, you know, you hear the word hospice. Well, hospice means one thing. It means that this person is going to die. It's not a question of if there is no more hope at that point. And my dad really wanted to live. Even when he was told hospice, he wanted to get a second opinion, you know? But there's this moment that me and my dad had there at the end, and knowing that he was going to die, it's like you bear it all, you say everything you wanna say. I had this stuff written down, conversations between me and my dad, you know, I asked him about his family, I asked him if he was religious. But I will say, you know, the dark sense of humor comes from somewhere because the first thing that my dad said to me when, when we found out that he was gonna be in hospice and I went over to the house and everything, first thing that he says to me is, "Well, kid, sorry to be heading out early." Like, what the hell?
Come on, Dad. What the hell, man? Read the
I
room,
know,
buddy.
I know,
That's awesome. I want to just quickly say, I mean, just as your friend and just as someone just listening to this story, I mean, I want to say I'm proud of you. I mean, that's not easy, and just hearing how you've like overcome a lot of this phobia, a lot of this fear, and just kind of stepping out of your comfort. I mean, God, I mean, comfort zone. That's just for lack of better terms, I should say, because I mean, this is just something that like no one else has really experienced, and even if you have, I mean, my goodness, it's the timing. Your brother, your dad, boyfriend, cousin, just dealing with a lot at one time. And that's a lot. That's a lot
it's
for
a
a
lot
young
for
woman to
sure.
deal with after you just graduated college and just left a pandemic. And I can't even imagine kind of still how you felt. But I mean, what has there been anything that's kind of like helped you through? I mean, I know you kind of mentioned some of your coping during that time, but I mean, has there been anything that you like just helps distract you or has helped you with this grieving process? Because again, as we mentioned, like it continues to take time and we all deal with it in different ways. But has there been something that's like kind of really worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, so kind of alluding to, like, you know, just as if someone's not gonna be there for you in the time that it's good, they won't be there for you when it's bad. I think, again, and this aligns with my spirituality, I think that people get removed from your life to make room for others, and your sister is a prime example of that, I have to say. You know, there's a lot of dynamics at play in just this game of life and whatnot. Um, eh, Going through this breakup while going through everything, you know, I said my friend was getting married. I went to my friend's wedding and then my dad was dead within the month. Like it, it, it I had so many people in my life, but at the same time too, I felt very alone because, you know, you're friends with couples and priorities shift, and when you're going through grief, you can't really restructure your primary circle either, so when your primary circle lets you down, you kinda just feel so, like, isolated. But your sister actually, she was a light. I think, you know, for a while there, I just needed someone to tell me, like, it's okay to take up space because, like, I spent so much time minimizing myself and my experience, and also not really being honest about the experience with my dad because I felt like it was my dad's story to share up until the point that he died. Once he died, like, then I felt like it was my story, my experience too, but I didn't wanna go and blast everything about my dad, you know? But Katie, she would ask me if I wanted to go out to drinks every single day. Granted, she had just gone through her own breakup too, but and it's funny because I remember telling my therapist, I did not even mention my therapist or therapy. Oh my goodness.
That's
I
helpful.
got
Love that. Huge advocate for that.
I started therapy when my dad's cancer progressed to stage 4.
Okay.
So I had a foundation with a therapist at the time, and I've been in and out of therapy for years. But anyways, I told my therapist it was funny because Katie and I were both in the same spot at the same time in terms of our breakups because me and my ex had gone no contact around the time she was going through her breakup, and you have this phase where you're like, "I wanna meet people." Um, but then you add the layer of the dead dad thing, and it's like you don't wanna meet people because it's like, what the hell do you say to people? "Hey, I'm going through a breakup, so I'm kind of wild and fun, but I'm also really unhinged because my dad just died." I'm like, and it's exhausting, you don't wanna meet new people because it's just like, you have to tell the story, it's so close in time that you like, it's a you can't ignore it, it happened, it would took up a year of my life, you know? But Katie asked me if I wanted to grab drinks with her every single day for, like, 4
I'm gonna have
weeks or
to unpack
so.
that for a second because Katie, if you're listening to this, no more drinks every single night. Let's save some money. Let's save our bodies. Let's go on walks every single day. Just kidding. Nah,
So
I love that for you though.
so she
She's
wasn't drinking every night, I can't put Katie out there like that, she was not
I
drinking every
love
night,
you so much, Katie.
she was just asking if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And so I ended up telling her, I was like, "Girl, Imma be so for real, no, like, and you should stop asking me." And she told me, she said, "I ask you every day because I want you to know that you have the opportunity to, but I expect you to say no. But in the off chance that you feel like you wanna venture out, like, I'm here and I just want you to know that I am here." And that immediate time, you know, my dad passed away November 8th, so let's think about what happened 3 days before, I don't know, election night. Um, imagine waking up at let me just say this, imagine waking up at 3 AM to take care of your dying father and you see on the news that a Cheeto was elected. Like, just let's talk about that one. I was in denial about the election until he stepped into office. And I was in denial about my dad for a while there too. Like, a lot happened. In hospice, it's like it kind of ramps up. You're taking care of someone around the clock. It's like the cancer journey kind of slowly builds up and then it ramps up at the end, and it's like it takes up more and more and more of your time. Like, I moved in with my parents to help take care of my dad, but then when they pass away, it's just done. Like,
Yeah.
what do you do with your time, you know? And it's just this weird, like, drop off, you know, after you dedicate so much of your time to it, and I would do it all over again, you know, but it so then it was Thanksgiving, and then it was Christmas, and so, like, for a while there, I just kinda, like, shelled up, like, I kinda felt like almost like a caged animal, like, I had so much to say, I was so angry at the world, I was angry at my ex, I was hurt, sad, everything like that, but I was just like, I'm isolating, and the isolation stage is a really real part of grief, and a lot of people don't get out at that point too, 'cause it hurts so bad, you don't even wanna put yourself out there to care for someone like that because, like, that can be ripped away, you know? But that passes, um, and I hit my point where I was like, "You know what, Katie? Let's go out for drinks." It also
Oh
helped
yeah.
that her birthday was in December, so there I was like, "I gotta go for her birthday," and I knew Katie was probably gonna be moving and whatnot, so I was like, "I gotta get in my time with Katie," and so, it just really brought out this, like, part of me, you know, in a year where, like, I moved to Raleigh with this boyfriend, and now I don't have this boyfriend. I built this community around my boyfriend, and now, like, that's complicated and weird, and I just went through so much, and so, like, it really brought out this opportunity to meet new people, which was really nice, and I think, as well too, just, like, with grief and processing, and I fucking moved again right after New Year's. I moved again. I moved into a nicer area, so it was just, like, really chaotic there for a little bit, but now life has slowed down, and, I would say, like, where I'm at now, I think I had my moment. I had my moment with Katie. We both had our moment where we were out on the town, and we were meeting people, and we were having fun, and, like, going out for drinks, but, like, not going too crazy and just different things like that. And then Katie, she moved, and
Mhm.
so life kinda slowed down, and I think now I'm at this point where just this past weekend, I drove back to my hometown because something that also happened this last year is my parents sold my childhood home. The home that we had for 21 years,
Yeah.
they moved to be closer to doctors and so that there was like a first floor master in case things did go bad, which I'm so glad that it did. But that was something that I kind of neglected to process. And I think, it took me a little bit to start processing. I think I wanted to sit in my shock a little bit more because it's uncomfortable to face. I definitely had my moments, where the shock broke in a really aggressive way, but then I hit this point where I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna let it just break slowly over time," and I was in denial, and I think, the cancer experience and the hospice experience was so traumatic that, like, my body just went into this shock. But, yeah, just kinda I would say, like, over time, you spend, in the immediately after effects of it all, you are like, "Oh, he's not dead. He's not dead. He's not dead." And then you have these really harsh moments of like, "Oh my god, he's dead." And then, like, slowly over time, they start to mesh in the other way, where it's like a 50-50. Like, some days I wake up and my dad is dead, and sometimes I wake up and I'm like, "He's in the hospital." And it creates this much gentler opportunity to really face what's happening, and I would say now I'm at the point where 90% of the time, I wake up and my dad is dead. And it's weird to put it like that, but it's like, you have to allow your body to process it as it needs to. You can't force it to realize something that it's not ready to realize. You can't break the shock early, and you can't put it off. You can't hide from those feelings because it's just gonna feel worse and worse and worse. But you start to have those moments of like, "Oh my gosh, this is something that I would call him about. Oh my gosh, this is something," like, I remember my first, like, "I need my dad" moment, you know? And so it's like those things start to happen and it starts to feel a little bit more real and you're like, "Okay, this is where life is now." And you asked me if there was anything that kinda helps me cope or helps me get through it all and everything, and one thing that was very prevalent there for a while, and I think it's still there, and I think it's gonna carry with me for a while, is I had this fearlessness, especially right in the wake. Oh my goodness, my ex and I, we went no contact maybe 2 weeks after my dad passed away. We don't need to talk about the timing of that. Like I said, the timing of it all, there's poetic irony in it, but,
Make for a
I
great Taylor Swift song, by the way.
oh my gosh. Taylor Swift and Hozier both released albums the day that I moved out from living with my ex and my cousin, and I was like, "What the hell is
So
happening?"
speaking about this universe working in mysterious ways, there you go.
There we go, there we
Spot
go.
on.
Um, but I had this fearlessness of, like, nothing can hurt me and nothing can scare me because my biggest fear just happened. Like, the big bad thing happened, and I remember I was snippy with my ex at one point, like, I was, rightfully so, an asshole to him, and I said, "I am so sorry that a breakup is the biggest thing that you've been going through this year, but it's certainly not for me, and I was with you for over 3 years. There was a lot of care, there was a lot of love there, but losing you is not going to hurt as bad as losing my dad." And I think that that mentality can be dangerous if you hold on to it too aggressively, but I think it also has helped me deal with some of the other things that happened because it's like, no, like, you know what? The worst thing happened and it was losing my dad, but I the other stuff don't really hold a flame to that. It feels minuscule in comparison to that, you know?
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. And I guess, as we kind of, think about the next steps and how you've continued to agree or, kind of cope through a lot of this stuff and think about your dad and overcome a lot of this adversity that you've been faced with, Ashley. I'm wondering, like, all right, so you and your dad, you love concerts. You went to Journey One. Did y'all go to like many other concerts together? And if you did, I'm curious kind of which one may have been your favorite.
Judas Priest was my favorite.
Hell yeah. Rock on, dude.
Yeah, so, I don't know, just to talk about my dad as a person, because I think that that's, something to really highlight there. He was the best dad that you could have ever asked for, and this is something else that really carries me through this loss as well too. My dad and I'm gonna take a second to find something. We did these memory journals. Uh, my dad didn't want a funeral. He was not the guy to make a scene. He just told
Feel
us to
that.
all Yeah, he told us to all go get drinks. And so we went to the Big Easy down in Raleigh. Shout out them. They let us rent the top half of the Big Easy for free when they found out what it was
Oh,
for.
hell yeah.
And
Shout out Big Easy, man. That's awesome.
and it was like that was always like a family favorite place to go to. Like my mom used to work in the city and whatnot. And it was just like I remember like I was like, wow, there's such good in humanity, like when they did that for us. But we had like these memory journals. And people were writing down different memories. And I had a childhood friend that I grew up with, and she lives in Vegas now. And so I asked her to send some memories, and um, she said, my favorite memories are always the Caniac festivals that we went to. My dad is the reason why I'm such a big Canes fan. Um, or when your dad would walk us to Ballantyne, my elementary school, for school every day. I would sit there and envy you for how your dad would walk with you riding your pink electric scooter to school every day, and he would walk it back home once you were in just to bring it back when school was out. Your dad was such a good dad, even to me when my dad wasn't there. Also, my dad said his favorite memory was when he visited and we all went to the 4th of July fireworks, and he wanted to say that he always remembered your dad being the person to pick me up and drop me off every time that we would hang out. He would take us to the movies or to the mall. He always took care of us, and he is grateful for that. And I think that that really encapsulates my dad. Like, he was if there was unconditional love that I felt in this life, it was my dad. If there was any person who told me that I deserved the world and even more, it was my dad. He is behind every accomplishment that I had. When I wanted internships in college, he sat down with me and he would send me internships. And when I've gone in for conversations about my full-time job or like negotiations on how much I make and different things like that, my dad would always sit there and he'd be like, you know what, Ashley, like you like go in there and you demand what you deserve because you know what you deserve. When me and my ex were breaking up, or even exes before him, my dad is so good at these, like, one-liners. Like, I remember not to call out my ex or anything, but one of his struggles was the transition into adulthood and really finding himself in adulthood and what he wanted to do.
Feel that. I think a lot of people can, but yeah, no, go on. Yeah.
Well, my dad's advice might not feel good to people who
Let's hear it. Lay it on us, Dad.
RIP in peace, but, he said to me, he said, "And remember, Ashley, next time you get into a relationship, make sure it's someone who knows what they wanna do in life." And he would just, like he'd have these, like, one-liner
Yeah.
pieces of advice, and it was just like and that's true. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
very solid in who I am and what I wanna do, and it is important to, like, know someone that's sure of themselves because that was such a big thing in that relationship, but yeah, like, my dad, the way that I put it is he gave me 24 years of the best training to stand on my own 2 feet for the day that he wasn't there. And unfortunately, that day is here now. He's not around anymore, but it's now my job to take everything that he taught me and to continue that on because, like, my dad didn't even want a funeral. He wouldn't want me to sit here and wallow and let my life pass me by because I'm so sad. I'm sad, I am, but, like, at the same time too, that would be a disservice to all the work that my dad put into raising me and to teaching me everything. Like, my dad wanted to see me live my life. He wanted to see so much more of my life, and maybe he's somewhere out there able to see it. I don't know what's out there after this. He's supposed to tell me, actually. We said that there was a he was gonna send me a signal to tell me what's out there, so I might have to do another episode with you to tell you what happens if
We
I
will
get
do
that
that.
signal.
We'll find a local medium that can help facilitate that conversation as well. I look forward to that. But Dad, if you're listening, please give a sign, and I'll tell you this: he is like
Yeah.
I know it. We know it. He's always going to be there with you because it's the spirit that you carry with you every single day. And as you talk about these memories, as you talk about your life, as you talk about kind of like what's next for you, I mean, he's always going to be a part of the way and along for the ride, for better for worse. But hopefully, a lot of those one-liners continue to stick with you, especially as we go through this challenging time of finding guys who kind of know what they want and can kind of speak their mind, but not be jerks. Because yeah, men are weird, and
They
I'm
are
sorry
a
for
little
that. Sorry for you women
silly.
out there listening to this. There's some weird guys out there. So guys, let's be less weird and more intentional with our time, please.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and, like, the big thing too, it's okay to not know what you, like, want to do, but, like, really, like, at the end of the day for anyone, put in the work on yourself. And, with everything that I've been through, I really take it in stride, and I remember one thing that my therapist asked me when I was going through everything with my ex and everything with my dad and whatnot. She said, "Has your ex ever experienced loss?" And I told her, "No, he hadn't." The biggest loss that he had experienced was my dad. And she said something to the effect of, "Someone who's been through your grief won't handle or someone who's been through grief won't handle your grief like this." And that was really telling. It's okay to not have these experiences. It's okay to not have experienced death. I mean, like, I kinda wish I was you, but, like, that's all okay, and we're all learning as people, and, like, I truly don't hold any animosity towards anyone from my past, but really, like, what that told me in that moment is, like, I have this really unique opportunity to be there for people who experience the harder parts of life, and I have a friend from college who his brother passed away really suddenly in college, and him and I were becoming friends at that time, but when he lost his brother, the first thing that he one of the first things that he said was, "I need to talk to Ashley. She's the only person that I know who's been through this." And now this is one of my absolute best friends, and I'd like to think, I was really able to help him get through that kind of loss, and I know that, like, it's unique to be 24 and have a family of 5 get down to a family of 3, but at the end of the day, this also makes me more prepared to show up for future partners, to show up
Yeah.
for friends, to show up for family when they experience things as well too, and it's an honor. It is an honor to sit in the shit with someone. It really is. It is an honor to be accepted into that level of vulnerability, and I have the opportunity to help people through that shit when they experience it.
Oh yeah, I love that attitude. I mean, I'll be honest with you. That's kind of a lot. I mean, going through stuff in a different way. Always figure like, why am I the one? Like, why are folks coming to me? Why parents, siblings, friends? Like, why is it always me? And then feeling like there's this weight on my shoulder. And then I realize it's like, well, one, I can take it, but two, it's what I want to do, and it's one of those things where I've always like prided myself personally on like, oh hey, yeah, I'm the go-to, right? But I was like talking to my therapist, I'm like, man, like at the end of the day, like I need a break, and why is everyone coming to me? And it's then kind of flip the perspective of, man, how cool is it? Like how grateful am I that siblings, friends, family have leaned on me personally, and I don't want to make this about me actually at all, but I just know a little bit about what you're going through in the sense that it's like, hey, this does prepare us. A lot of what we've gone through prepares us for what's next, and I love to hear your story, and I'm so grateful for you sharing it with us and a lot of other people that have maybe experiencing some similar stuff. And I think as we kind of look through the next chapter and what's next for you, I mean, kind of curious, like how has this grief stuff fit in for what's ever next for you? Because you mentioned to me, and I know there's plenty of times from hearing it from you, like New York City, New York City. So that's kind of shifted a little bit. Is that right? Like no more maybe Big Apple as of yet. I'm not. We're always going to hold out some hope for that. But I mean, uh, Where do you think that all kind of fits into to this next chapter of your life?
Well, I referenced earlier how my mom said, "This is gonna change everything," when my brother passed away, and I really struggled with that idea of everything changing, at that time, and I really clung on to a lot of things that just were no longer fitting into my life as a product of trying to avoid change, and I think now I'm staring into a complete unknown. I really thought I didn't like Raleigh. I didn't enjoy Fuquay. Sorry, Fuquay. But I didn't, and I felt like I didn't really belong there. And where I was living in Raleigh, both with my cousin and where I moved afterwards, because I only moved like a block away at the time, was very close to where my brother passed away, actually. So now I live in this like different part of Raleigh completely that's like completely unknown, brand new. I have new people in my life right now, but I also like I love my job. I When I first got this job, I used to say, like, this could be a really long-term thing for me if I wasn't moving to New York. So I think, I kinda had this mentality for a while there of always looking to the next thing and not really being present in the moment, and I'm also kinda sitting here and wondering, you know, did I immediately try and snap back to New York because that was my plan? That was my plan with my ex, and that was my plan before him, but here I am, I'm 24, I haven't been single since I was 20. Um, I had a dad at that point too. I don't now, so I don't know, I'm just kind of focusing on just, like, learning where I'm at now, like, learning the area that I just moved to, enjoying my job, and not thinking about this, like, next thing down the road. Now I will say, like, New York is somewhere that I've always felt at home. My dad's family, they moved here. I think it was my dad's grandparents, moved from Germany and Sweden, and they moved to Brooklyn. So we just like my family was immigrant family, and my grandpa had a construction business in the 70s in New York City. Draw the conclusions that you will from that. But I have the blueprints to the Yankee Stadium, like, my uncle built the Yankee Stadium, so New York has, like, got such a special place in my heart, and, I won't necessarily say that it's not gonna happen because I think I can't tell you what will happen after this last
Yeah,
year.
I think that's been a big theme of this show is you don't know what's gonna happen next.
It's like that TikTok sound that's like, "And be careful what you wish for,
Oh my
'cause in
god,
an
yes.
instant, it
Oh.
can all go boom." Like, that's been my whole last year. Like, if you had told me, like, 14, 15 months ago that this is where I would be now, I'd simply put would not believe you. I'd be like, "What the hell? No, let's stop this ride. We don't need to get on this roller coaster." Um, but yeah, so now I'm focusing on the present. I am kind of establishing, who is my primary circle. I'm meeting new people. I'm in this new area. My job is going really well. Like I said, I absolutely love it. My cat and I are super comfortable. I kind of don't want to put him through another move because he doesn't like moving that much. And I live 10 minutes from my mom now. And yeah, just kind of seeing where it takes me. I'm just kind of not putting any pressure on what the future holds. I think for the first time in a really long time, I mentioned how much, time cancer takes up. Um, I just recently over Valentine's Day, I went and your sister was my Valentine. Um,
Oh.
yeah, Katie, we love her. I hope she listens to this, she's
She
going to.
will. I'm
But
gonna make her.
yeah. But, that was the first time that I was able to use PTO on myself in a really long time. I had saved up all my PTO in case something happened with my dad, and, like I said, my work supported me so much, but I also just wanted to have the option to, if I needed to take more time, and I ended up using it. Um, but even before that, I think I lost a lot of pieces of myself to my relationship. I think, everyone's kind of been in those relationships before where you just get comfortable and you're just, like, stuck at home all the time instead of just experiencing life, and I'm 24, like, how have I been here for 2
Young,
years?
wild, and free now. Look at
Yeah,
you.
exactly. How have I been here for 2 years and I'm just finding out what bars I like, you know? And I'm not a big drinker, but, like, even just in general, like, how am I just now exploring the place that I've been, like, in for, like, over 2 years? So, I think now I'm just kind of finding myself, finding out what hobbies I want, finding out what I like to do, where I like to go, who I like to spend my time with, and we'll see where it ends up. I might end up in Europe, I might end up in New York, I might who knows? Who
It's,
knows?
that's so exciting. Honestly, a good segue as we kind of wrap things up with some rapid fire. So hold on, Ashley. But so a little birdie told me that you are trying out some hobbies, but I think there's one hobby that might involve some candle making. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love making candles.
What okay, how did this start? And it's gonna be sound weird, but I think Serenity by Jan, The Office. Do you have a favorite scent by chance?
Oh, rose and jasmine combined. That is my favorite. I'm such a floral
Okay.
girl, so this started because when I went to Charlotte for work last July, and my friend and her boyfriend were making candles as gifts, and so we cut up wine bottles and we made candles, and I was like, "Wow, that's really easy to do," and I was getting increasingly annoyed with how a, expensive candles are, and B, um, my cat is so sensitive to smells, and, like, so many things are toxic to cats, and rose and jasmine are not. So I was like, "Well, I can just be making these floral scents at home that are safe for my cat," and so I just started doing that. I'm also a big person on, like, if I can make it or do it myself, I will.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I make my own sugar scrubs too. I do my own lash lifts at home, like,
Okay,
I
I'm familiar with that.
yeah, yeah, and then I'm also not upset when it, like, fades out quickly or when I mess it up because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I can just wait 10 days and do it again." It's like $20 on Amazon to buy a kit that
Oh my
is,
god.
like, 10 uses, whereas, like, they charge, like, hundreds and hundreds of dollars for that. So, I'm big on, like, if I can do it myself, I will. Like, I kinda wanna try making earrings, like, or jewelry, like clay jewelry and stuff like that. Take a crack at that. I'm very creative. I like to, like, make something that has a product at the end
Yeah.
of it. So, that's one thing that I'm trying out. I just started pickleball. I
Okay, look at okay, so you joined the sensation finally.
just a
I
few
guess has the
years
hype di is
late.
this post-hype, pickleball now, I guess? Or is it
Yeah.
still, like, just are we in the peak of all the
I don't know. I have dating apps and, like, every person says, "I'm looking for a pickleball partner."
oh my god.
So
Oh
I
my
guess the hype is
god.
still there. But there's a pickleball court right next to my building actually in my apartment complex. So I was like, "Well, I gotta try this out because I love being outdoors. I used to play disc golf a lot, so it's like if I can find, like, something that can, like, be social and semi-active with friends and stuff, like, and be outdoors, especially as it gets warmer, definitely enjoy that. And then I have my dad's guitar. So I might try me and my dad used to play guitar together when I was really little. I don't really remember a lot, so I might try and pick it up. But yeah.
You got this. Well, I guess, speaking on the music sense though, what, is there any band that people should be checking out that you listen to all the time and maybe others haven't heard of, or just at the end of the day, like, hey, let's plug some good artists because you're around them pretty often
Yeah.
with your work.
So, Rainbow Can Surprise is my favorite band.
Oh
I
yeah, there you
love
go, Boone.
Yep, yep. I've seen them live like 7 times. I love Mount Joy, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, keep
someone and
going.
I think those are more recognizable names, but I will say the band Ripe. Oh my goodness.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
In my mind, they are as big as Rainbow Can Surprise and Mount Joy, and, like, I look today, they're not, and they need to be. And I really like this artist called Joe P. So I'm also referencing artists that I've met. Joe P is such a funny guy, and he's so freaking talented. I don't know how he's not bigger. Ripe, they're all so sweet. They were like, they're fun guys. They're coming to Raleigh in April. Um, highly recommend. They put on a fantastic show. They're kind of like party band, like they got trumpets and stuff.
Okay,
Um,
where in Raleigh are they coming to? Because I have definitely got to check that out.
the bowstring, like brew yard.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah. Holy
So, like,
crap.
smaller, like, venue, and, like, when I saw that they were playing there, I was like, "Oh my goodness, like, how are they not playing at the Ritz at least? Like, let's get these guys famous. They're dropping new music, on the 21st, like, let's get them famous. We love them." Judah and the Lion are
Yes.
so nice. They are so nice. Love those guys.
And I love your taste of music because you're just I'm like looking at my Apple Music right now. I'm just kind of like, okay, yep, 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 yep. They're on my
Okay,
recently
so
played. Okay, yep.
I'm slightly judging you for the Apple Music, but that is
Dude, it's the
okay.
app that came with the phone. Why do I need to download another app when I already got one right
Spotify is
here? You're
so
just saying
much
that because you're
better.
this. It's the Swedish in you. Look, I get it. You're probably
Yes.
right, but
Yeah, it is a Swedish in me.
that and I know you, I've seen this cool new place that you got, and seen some of the vinyls that you have. Like, so vinyls are awesome. I mean, we're collecting a lot over here. Is there like a go-to one that you like to put on the player? I mean, kind of walk me through some of your favorites that you've collected, over the course of, just finding and picking them all up.
Yeah, so I mean, working in radio, sometimes my boss will get stuff from artists and like he might slide me a vinyl or two. So I have some good ones from that. But I recently went up to Massachusetts. There's this town that I love called Great Barrington. And they have this vinyl shop called Rob's Vinyl and Audio, which funny enough is my dad's name, Rob. And I guess he had been there a lot. My mom had actually told me that, and I didn't know that, but I picked up Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. I picked
Okay.
up a Journey album, and I picked up a Aerosmith classic album, and they're all first presses. So those are some of my favorite finds for sure. I have the most random vinyls too because I got my record player when I was like 14. So I have Paramore, I have Fall Out Boy,
Yeah, that makes
um,
sense. Yeah.
the Saved Rock and Roll album, I have my mom's old Cher albums, I have a few Stevie Nicks albums, but then I have all the Rainbow Kitten Surprise albums, including their most recent one. So I've got a pretty funny collection, I'll tell you that.
No, that's awesome. And so I guess kind of one last question that I'm thinking about. So I mean, families immigrated a lot of time in New York City. I just am curious, do y'all have any like ties to the mob or mafia up in there? And if you can't say it because they might be listening to this and tracking us down, but any cool mafia stories?
So I really don't know, much about that. I do know that I watched some documentaries about the mob and the mafia, that there's a quote in there that's like, "It's just known who like, anyone who was in construction in the '70s, like, they were controlled by the mob," and I texted my dad. I had my suspicions, and it had never been confirmed because that's the thing is, like, they just didn't talk about it. Um, and so I asked my dad, and he said that he never interacted with them, but, maybe some other people in our family might have.
Maybe
So,
the sign that you're looking for is going to be the, hey, it's time for you, Ashley. Because I guess when you're in the mafia, you can't talk about it. But hey, maybe
I don't think they were in the mafia.
I'm
I
teasing.
I think that maybe, and I might be a little bit wrong about the dynamics at play, but I think it's more of, the presence is known of the mob and the mafia, and you keep them happy, and sometimes they tell you to do something and you don't ask questions, and I think that maybe that's how they fit into it, but yeah, they just did not talk about it much. But what I will say about the construction in New York City, my grandpa's biggest client was CBS. So
Okay.
Columbia Records was, my grandpa worked on all of those buildings, and I mentioned, like, my uncle built the Yankee Stadium in the early 2000s. I have the blueprints from that. That's pretty cool, but this ties into the music. I know a few things about Columbia Records. My uncle was taking the service elevator one day, and in the service elevator, there was Michael Jackson. And
Okay. Wow.
he just said, "Hi, Mr. Michael." And Michael Jackson walked off the elevator, and, my uncle walked in the elevator. My dad told me that in one of the Columbia Records buildings, and granted, this is the '70s, so
Okay.
also, this is not fact that this is still there. Um,
Allegedly. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if this stuff is still there or not, but apparently in one of the Columbia record buildings that my grandpa worked on, there was a like, hidden door or window or something in, like, the CEO's office that was connected to a kitchen where a private chef would make him meals. And my grandpa worked on that, and
Oh my
then
goodness.
Columbia Records, you are not listening to this when I say this, but,
Yet, not listening to this yet, but
yes,
that record deal for this podcast soon.
sure, but you're not gonna hold me accountable for this because this is all
Actually, this is
hearsay.
all very fictional. Everything that we talked about at the end of
Everyone
this.
involved in these stories is dead. I cannot be held accountable. Not not to make that joke, but, yeah, my dad told me that one time my grandpa took him to the room that they had vinyls in, gave him a box and said, "You have 2 minutes, grab whatever you want." And my dad ran through that room, and he said that he wasn't even looking at what he was picking up, he was just grabbing whatever he could. And the biggest crime of all is the fact that my dad got rid of all of his vinyls before I was born.
Oh my gosh.
No, literally. So Columbia Records, I also don't have any of these vinyls. I would brag about it if I did, I promise. But everyone in these stories is dead, so there's no one to hold accountable for it. It's all hearsay. We can't fact check it, but these are just the stories that I heard. There we go.
Just
I'm
kinda like
good.
while we're, still waiting to get the release of those JFK files, but that's a story for another day. But hey, Ashley, I'm so grateful for you to come on, and I appreciate you sharing the story. And I guess one last thing that I'm curious about, any other one-liners or advice from your dad that you can leave us with, as we, continue to go on and just fight through our own battles, our own journeys, and just recognize that life is crazy and, we don't know what to make of it, but what we do know is that there's a lot of good people in this world. People matter, and kind of curious to see if there's anything that you can drop the mic with as we go on.
Oh, let me think. Let me think. There's so many good one-liners that he had. Um
Sorry to put you on the spot, by the way.
Yeah,
That
I'm just trying to remember. I'm trying to, like, think about the context and stuff because a lot of them are very, like, applied to me, but, I mean, just in general, you know, my dad had this, like he had this mentality of just, like, you gotta push through. I think he also kinda put in this, like, mentality of, like, "You're not special," and I that could sound so bad for so many people, but for me, that's just, like, I love knowing that everything keeps pushing through, everything keeps going
yeah.
on, and one thing that my dad always said, no matter what the scenario was, is, "Don't let them bullshit you. You go in and you get what you deserve." Whether that's with jobs, whether that's with friendships, whether that's with relationships, don't let them bullshit you.
No,
So
I love that. And I think that's definitely a good line to lean on because I mean, that's kind of what this podcast was about, like relatable takes. At the end of the day, we're all people, we're all going through shit. We don't know what to make of it, but what we do have is we can just lean on each other. And so, Ashley, thank you again. You're a good friend, you're a good person. And at the end of the day, just continuing to cheer you on and all the great stuff that you're going to be doing.
yeah, thank you for having me.
Super grateful again for Ashley coming on and just being vulnerable with us and sharing her story. As you can tell, it was a lot to unpack, but she's someone who has a unique perspective and can be an inspiration for anyone else who may be going through something similar. So, if you like what you've heard, please share it with someone else. Don't be afraid to like or subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media, and I look forward to sharing more conversations with you all in the future. Now, with that being said, treat others with kindness. Take care, y'all.